I think everyone has an inherent worth, no matter what their past is or what happened or what their current physical or mental situation is.
Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Here we are once again. Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Whether you found us on streaming or iTunes or Apple Podcasts or Pandora or whatever you use, we appreciate you coming back and giving us a listen. We have been looking forward to a conversation with the individual about to join us now. Hawken Miller, A, has the coolest name, in my opinion, and B, he's also a rare disease patient, so we've been looking forward to interviewing him. So, Hawken, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sean and Kyle, for having me. I'm excited to get this conversation going.
Yeah, man, we've heard a lot about you, just by reading your columns, and we've had a couple conversations with your mom through your work with CureDuchenne, so it's going to be good.
Uh-oh, you've talked to my mom?
Yeah, it's buckle up, buddy. Can you share a little bit about yourself with our listeners?
Yeah, my name is Hawken Miller. As you said earlier, I am 23. I have Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy, which is a rare disease. It's a type of muscular dystrophy, one of the most common types of muscular dystrophies. And full-time, I'm a journalist, freelancer, writing about anything from esports to biotech to disabilities, of course. And I also write a column, too, for Bio News Services. So that's a little bit about me. I recently graduated from the University of Southern California, so everyone fight on if you're from USC. And so that's a little bit about me.
That's amazing. Congratulations on the graduation.
Thank you.
Now what?
Yeah, so that's the big question. I was working for Bio News. Now I'm looking for the next opportunity. When I interned at the Washington Post this summer, I fell into writing about video games and esports. And so I'm trying to write more about that on a freelance basis. And then I'm trying to start a stream as well, where I play video games and hang out with people. And it's sort of like a podcast, but you got video games on top of it, which I always love. So that's what I'm thinking right now.
I'll play if it's Risk. You ever played that board game?
Risk is one of my favorites. I love
that game.
That's one of my favorites.
Can you play that as a video game?
Yeah, I'm sure they have virtual versions of it out there.
I'm just curious about your writing, where that came from, how that started. You already sound smarter than me and Kyle. No offense, Kyle. I'm just curious how you became a wordsmith in your writing and kind of fell in love with that.
Yeah, it's actually started back in 8th grade. I wrote an essay called This I Believe. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that book. It's a series of essays from famous people like Bill Gates on what they believe, their worldview. And so I wrote that essay about my faith and how God has played a role in my life. And I got up and each of us, were volunteered to read it out loud in class. And I started reading it and I broke down. Then my friend had to finish reading it for me. And so that was a crazy experience. And even that whole year in 8th grade, I had a really amazing English teacher, Miss Wilder. And she helped me understand, I think, what my gifts were. And while I wasn't the perfect student, obviously, and I got B's, she still really helped me, understand how to write succinctly without any B verbs. That was a huge thing. We had to, circle them in our papers and try to take them out. And so that's how that started. And then specifically journalism, that was in high school. I started working for the yearbook my sophomore year of high school. One of the teachers knew I took photography, and so she introduced me to the publications advisor who was in charge of the newspaper and yearbook. And so I started taking photos and writing for the yearbook. And then that transitioned into my junior year, managing editor of the newspaper. And then I became editor-in-chief of that newspaper, my high school newspaper. So it's just kind of one thing after another. It kept leaning back to it.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that you mentioned that you got B's in English, but you really learned how valuable your gift, I guess. Maybe it wasn't quite developed into a gift at that point, but it didn't matter what the grade was. Like, you liked writing and you seemed to be good at it. You were gravitating towards it. And, I think that's something we can all learn about grades, right? It's not always the 4.0 that wins. It's the understanding and what you feel towards the subject, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not struggling through something and trying to understand it, then you're not really learning it, in my opinion. And I felt like that way for taking AP Physics. That was like the hardest class I've ever taken, but I felt like I learned a lot of it because, I struggled through it. And, some of my friends, it came really easy, but, I felt like I learned a lot, even if I didn't know what I was doing a lot of the times.
I think I feel that way in life in general. It's a struggle, so I must be great or doing something right. Can you share a little bit about Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy? What is that? How does that impact, or how has it impacted life for you?
So Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy is a progressive neuromuscular disorder affecting a protein in all muscle cells that builds up the cell wall around your muscle cells. And so it is much more prone to breaking, like the whole cell, and thus killing the cell essentially. So that in real life looks like losing a lot of muscle mass and function and ability. For me right now, since it's a progressive disease, you never know like what might happen tomorrow or even, a month from now. But right now I'm pretty stable. I use a power wheelchair to get around when I'm not at home. And when I am at home, I do walk around a little bit. It's always good to stand as much as I can on my own to, help with muscle mass and bone density and all that good stuff. So, and I also need a lot more rest and recovery time if I, have a long day or end up doing something strenuous. But I really try to, even if I can't do something, not do it if I'm straining myself, because I really want to protect my muscles as much as I can.
Mm. Do you find that hard to do at 23 years old?
Not so much now as I did when I was younger. I know in middle school, the social activity was just running around and playing handball, doing all of that. And at that point I was still able to do it. So my parents always wanted me to take it easy, and I didn't necessarily do that all the time. But, at some point you have to balance, having a childhood versus, protecting your future. And I think that was a good balance that we were able to strike. And when we went on Boy Scout campouts, my dad was able to help me out and carry me around and tell me to stop running around and conserve my energy. So that it was a challenge when I was younger. Now I don't feel that as much, because that's not necessarily something that is a huge social activity for 23-year-olds. Obviously, like going out and doing, hikes and such could be, but I tend to think a lot of it's conversation based and just, hanging out and playing video games or whatever it might be.
Sure. Did you say how old you were when you were diagnosed? If not,
I have not. Yeah, I was 5 when I was diagnosed, 5.5. Yeah.
What were the symptoms that led your parents to start seeking answers?
Yeah, I think back when I was little, I was part of an AYSO, little soccer league. I forgot what her name was, but I think my dad was one of the assistant coaches or something. And they noticed that, I wasn't keeping up with the group as we were doing like our sprints around the soccer course, the soccer field, I should say. And so my mom was like, maybe he's just not trying hard enough. So they proceeded to make me do 1 sprint to try to make me faster. And obviously that didn't work. And, there were some signs. And so we ended up getting tested for it, but it was a process to even get that test because they're like, no, he's fine. Like, he looks strong. Like, there's no problem. But it took a real fight on my mom's part to get the blood test that was needed to find out what was wrong with me. And so they ended up doing that and finally got the diagnosis. And obviously it's a little bit hard to explain to a 5-year-old, but from what they have told me, they say, I was a lot more peaceful after that, knowing like it's not my fault that this has happened. This is something that I can't control, and I think that helped me a lot to get through it.
That's probably a massive challenge for anybody at most young ages. If you're beating yourself up all the time, because inevitably we compare ourselves to our friends or our social circles, and when we aren't able to jump or run or do the things that our 5, 10, 15-year-old friends can do, I think that that probably wears on a child differently than it might wear on a 35 or a 40-year-old.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I definitely feel that, like, especially during my teenage years, that comparison really kicked in. I was like, well, I'm not developing like my friends. Like, they're all so much taller. And a lot of that was because steroids mess with your ability to produce different hormones and stuff and grow. So that was definitely a challenge for me. And, on top of that, they could do a lot of other things that I couldn't do. And I think, I slowly realized that I could, ask them for help and not just, try to do it on my own and compare myself in that way, and that they could be a resource too to help me.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things is, like, you mentioned earlier that maybe it was a matter of just trying harder and, and finding that balance in your head where you're like, you know what, I need to try as hard as I can, but there are some things that I literally can't do. And so I should focus on the things that I can do, and so that balance between like telling yourself to try harder and then understanding your disease and your limitations.
Exactly. And that's kind of been my thought process a lot of the time, is really focusing on things I can do rather than things I can't do.
Right.
And writing is obviously one of those things that I can definitely do and hope to do for a very long time.
You mentioned steroids and the side effects that come with those. That makes me wonder what you're able to do or what therapies you're able to engage in, and I'm curious what impacts those have on your body or your life as a whole. Yeah,
so maybe to explain a little bit for those who don't know why steroids would be good for muscular dystrophy, is it when the cells die, it causes inflammation, and so it makes it harder to move around and use your muscles. So corticosteroids combat that inflammation. And so, but it also has side effects like many other things do in life. And the main effect is just it stunts your growth a little bit. And so I actually was on growth hormone for a couple years, maybe 12 to 15-ish. And so that helped maintain my height more than anything. So instead of, being 5 feet, even I'm 5'4" right now. So that helped combat it. And then, like I said earlier, just like the whole puberty thing, and I was a little bit delayed, compared to all my friends. And that is something that, was a tough to get around. And I felt, I was just like the baby of all the groups, and that didn't feel great. But other than that, there's a lot of other side effects that can happen, but thankfully for me, I haven't encountered any of those behavioral side effects that have been reported. And even the being overweight is one of the other side effects that can cause that. And I think it's a combination of just, eating healthy and using discipline and, not having, in and out every day or whatever it might be. So I've been able to manage a lot of it, but the main one for me was just the growth situation.
I wonder if Kyle can speak to the other side of that spectrum. in terms of puberty. He's had a beard since he was 11.
Yeah, and
how awkward was that?
It is when black hair starts spouting out of your chin in like, third grade or whatever. Yeah.
Hawken, what's family life like for you? Do you have siblings?
It's actually just me. I'm only child, so.
Okay.
Yeah. At one point I wanted to have a brother or sister, but now looking back, I'm glad, I had all of the attention growing up.
So talk to us a little bit about your mom. Micaiah mentioned she does work in the CureDuchenne world.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean to you? How does that impact, or how does it affect you, or does it?
I think it's really inspiring to see her work tirelessly for a cure and to help other kids. It was initially she wanted to help me, but now it's become such a huge thing, and we're impacting so many other lives. And I have the opportunity to speak, on big platforms and, help other kids going through the same thing and, other adults going through the same thing. And I think seeing her be so passionate about this and work so hard at it really has shown me that, I need to find something that drives me the same way that CureDuchenne drives her, because it's just inspiring to see the work ethic that she puts in and day out to make an impact for all these kids.
Absolutely.
So, can you tell us what CureDuchenne does? I think we all in our diseases, we all have a definite, and even personally, each person has a different definition of the word cure, right? And so, when I see that name, that's a pretty powerful statement. Here, this is what we're going to do. We're going to cure Duchenne. So that's pretty cool. But what does that look like as far as what CureDuchenne does and what it means to you?
Yeah. Cure is a word that has a lot of meanings for people. For us, at least for the foundation, it's curing the disease. But that isn't being one drug is going to cure the whole thing, because there's so many, side effects to losing muscle mass and the progressive nature of the disease, like heart function, lung function, inflammation. So, and even, genetic mutations and modifications that they can do nowadays, which is pretty awesome. So we like to call it like a cocktail of different drugs that would be used to cure the disease. And with CRISPR, that opens a whole another can of worms that goes directly to the DNA level. So that could be a possible outcome too. But beyond, funding research and looking for a cure, we're also helping kids live the best lives that they can while we're waiting for the cure. So we have CureDuchenne care sessions where we teach parents how to best care for their kids with Duchenne, like newly diagnosed families, of what stretching is, how to have a good diet, night splints, the whole 9 yards, different power chair devices, mobility devices, you name it. So there's that. And then we also have more on the cure side, the ventures part of our foundation, whereas basically we provide early money for a lot of these biotech companies, early biotech companies. And the hope is that eventually they'll become big enough and get bought by a larger company. And then we can have a return on that investment and then put that investment back into the next project that we're looking at. So that's kind of CureDuchenne in a nutshell.
Amazing. Attacking the problem from lots of different angles. That is really great. Hawken, I was reading a book that said that definiteness of purpose is the number one most defining factor in success. So if you were to boil it down and be like, all right, what's my purpose? What is the purpose of Hawken Miller? Would you be able to make a definite declaration, and what is it?
I could definitely make one right now. And the interesting thing is we all change as people, and who knows what in 5 years my purpose might have changed. But at least for now, I feel like my purpose is to give hope to a lot of people out there who are not just going through Duchenne, whatever difficulties they face. And everyone, no matter if they're disabled or not, carries their weight, carries their own burdens. And I really just want to be there to be a light for people and to show them that you can do this, you can reach for your dreams, and I'm doing it and so can you. And I think that's what I want my purpose to be, my lasting impact to be on this world.
Nice. Wow.
I'm curious, could you, with that in mind, could you give somebody a piece of advice, a step to take? You know, if you're talking to somebody young or old that maybe is newly diagnosed or facing some newer challenge and they feel hopeless, what advice or tips could you give to help somebody actually put a smile on their face or wake up in another couple days, couple weeks, couple months?
Well, I think every day we have, first off, I'd say is a blessing. And I think a lot of people take the time we have for granted. And I think just the understanding of like we have a finite amount of time on this earth and how we spend it is super important, and who we spend it with is super important. I would start with that. And then for me, it's just taking one step at a time. What is the next thing I could do to help my career or help myself with my health situation? I think it's surrounding yourself by the right people, being close to family. And if, you know, I know everyone has different situations with their family, but at least making a family of some sorts and really finding a support group or someone that you could confide in and go to with all of your difficulties. And I think for me, it's not so easy for me to do that with my parents, but like having someone older, like a couple years older, who has a similar situation or just is a little bit older and wiser to confide in and talk about what you're going through, I think is important, because I tend to be the person that doesn't really show emotion that well or keeps it bottled up inside. So I would be willing to talk to people about it and seek help rather than trying to do it all on your own, because no one can do it all on their own.
So what is connecting with others? You know, you mentioned that is a powerful thing. And in the same situation, what does connecting with others in your community look like? How do you get that done?
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult now with the coronavirus, right. But I found ways to do it. Like I mentioned, video games. A lot of boys with Duchenne go there to video games a lot because it allows us to do things that we couldn't do in real life. It allows us, you know, a virtual space to kind of be whoever we want to be, do whatever we want to do. And so that's a big way that I can connect with people. And then we have social media, which is essentially made for connecting with others. And the Duchenne community is very active on that social media platform. And so I have a page specifically to engage with Duchenne specific audience and share my columns and any pieces of advice. And I think I could do a lot better at being consistent with social media, and that's always a struggle. That always will be a struggle. But I'd say video games, social media, and then just through CureDuchenne, I think I connect with a lot of people, whether it's at events or our cares workshops. At the Futures workshop last October, I got to meet a lot of patients, and one of them I met a few times, and we're now friends, and sometimes we'll play Call of Duty together. And so in person is one through CureDuchenne, and then through the online space, whether that be video games or Facebook, has really helped me connect with others.
Yeah. I love how it's, you know, you talk about current situation, coronavirus, and everything that it is impacting or has impacted. I love how it's that infrastructure of social media has been in place for 15 years or so. And now is probably the time everybody is utilizing it. You know, huge upticks in online video chats and things like Zoom and FaceTime and whatnot. And so I love that the foundation for that was put in place a long time ago, but now everybody's getting involved. Yep. And I also love that you talk about video games and the different ways of connecting online. It's not always meeting somebody for dinner or getting together at a coffee shop. It's simply just playing a game together. And I think that one of my favorite authors, his name is Matthew Kelly, and in one of his books, many books, he commonly refers to as that social time as carefree timelessness. And I love the concept where the people, essentially, it's talking about getting together with the people you're closest with. And have you ever noticed that you may not talk about anything important or valuable or do anything significant? You're just in the same room together. Mm-hmm. And it's that concept of no agenda, no exact thing to do or say. It's just carefree timelessness. And I feel like that's something you're encouraging and promoting it in different words.
Yeah, and it's been a great way to stay connected with friends from high school, too, as they're around the U.S. A lot of them are actually close to home, but it doesn't really matter at this point because we're all social distancing anyway. Right. And even friends from college, like we started a Minecraft server, and so now we're, building our structures and mining stuff, and we're doing it together. And like you said, there's not exactly a specific plan. It's just to be in the same room, or now more than ever, the same online space.
Hawken, you're a journalist, and we heard about how you love writing, and it's your passion. What project or article or groups of articles are you most proud of?
That's a great question. I'll go with one of the stories I did for the Washington Post about the Overwatch League, which is a video game, and they recently introduced a competitive scene for it, like the NFL, so to speak. And what was cool about that was I got to interview a lot of people pretty high up in the esports world at Blizzard Entertainment, which they've published Warcraft, World of Warcraft, all those games. And so they're pretty well known. So it was great being able to interview those kinds of people. And then I actually got to go to the grand finals for Overwatch League in Philadelphia in the Wells Fargo Arena. And I had never been to an esports event of that size before. And it was impressive just to see the energy around, a video game. A lot of people have trouble understanding that, but I was able to see that firsthand, and people dressing up as characters. And one guy even dressed up as the Oilers mascot, the big fluffy, what's his name? I forgot his name, but even that mascot was there. And so I like being able to interview those people and being able to see how big of a deal it is for so many people, and being able to write that for an audience that doesn't necessarily understand the subject that well, or why people would do that. So I think combined, that was a really fun story to work on. And yeah, I felt like I put a lot of work into it, and it paid off in the end.
Nice. So, Hawken, when we first started, we joked about talking to your mom and having a list of things and so on. I'm curious, I'm putting you on the spot. Got to be somewhat self-reflective and honest with yourself and us. If we were talking to your mom, and your mom could pick, we're going to do two things. Your mom were to, in your opinion, what would you say your mom is probably most frustrated with you on? Like, when does she really get frustrated with Hawken? Yeah, we've all been there. So is it, something simple like you never make your bed, or what is something your mom would say, oh man, this drives me nuts about my boy?
I think I can be pretty stubborn sometimes. I think she gets most frustrated when she's telling me something that she thinks is important and I'm tuning her out, and I'm like, what? And she's like, no, I don't want to say this again. You were supposed to be listening the first time. So I can tend to tune her out, which is not great, but I like to think I've gotten better at it, especially in these close quarters. I don't have as much room for error.
And then secondly, if she were talking about you from, say, a platform or a stage, what are some things positively that she would say that you bring to the table?
I think she would say my compassion, like I wouldn't hurt a fly, and I think everyone has an inherent worth no matter what their past is or what happened or what their current physical or mental situation is. I think I am disciplined and hardworking, especially in things that I want to succeed in. I know, for example, in school, like I would, if I turned in an assignment late or if there was something wrong, I'd beat myself up about it and be like, how could I do this better? And obviously, too much of that can be bad, and I've learned how to balance it. I think she would also say that I'm pretty. I persevere through a lot of things, and I don't complain a lot when there's a lot to complain about. And don't get me wrong, I have plenty to. I do complain about things, but I try not to, because it just kind of brings down everyone around you, and it puts you in a worse mood than you were before.
I'm absolutely touched by that, so thank you for sharing.
Well, Hawken, it's been an awesome conversation. Where can people find you, find your writing, find you on social media? Where do we send our listeners?
Yeah, so to see my writing, I actually recently updated my portfolio website, so it's pretty easy, hawkenmiller.com. I thank my parents every day for giving me that name, because I could get a domain name for that pretty easily. On Twitter, same thing, Hawken Miller. And I'd say Twitter and then my website are probably the best ways to find out more about me and read more of my stuff. And I think both of those kind of are more my professional settings. And I'd invite any other people in the Duchenne community wanting to find me on Facebook. I have a page specific for that, Hawken Frederick Miller, which is my middle name, FredRick. I think that's right. And,
I was wondering, are you taking your time or did you forget?
Sometimes there's an extra E in Frederick, but there isn't in my middle name. So yeah, so Facebook there, Twitter, my name, Hawken Miller, and then hawkenmiller.com. And I'm starting my streaming as well. So my handle for that is Hawk Wars. So you can find me there. I'm working on it and setting that all up now, but it will be on all those places when it goes live. So
love it. You got a lot going on, and we're grateful to be connected to you. Like I said, it's been a conversation long waiting on our calendar, and we are thankful that we've been able to connect and have you on the show and share a bit of your story with our listeners. So thank you, Hawken, for being with us today and for being so open and cool and encouraging at the same time.
Thanks, guys. It was great talking to you as well.
Well, that was another fantastic interview. I enjoyed listening to a little bit of his story. What a cool dude. We've gotten to a point where we want to share some thank you notes. As our loyal listeners know, this is something we started doing this season, and we do find the value and understand the importance of helping keep our minds right by being grateful and expressing gratitude along the way. So, Kyle, will you share your thank you note today?
Yeah, way back in 2006, I was coming to grips. It was 10 years, almost 10 years after, but I was really still coming to grips with my FA diagnosis and trying to figure out what the heck to do about it. And I had this idea for ride-ataxia to ride my bike across country. And one of the first people I talked to about it was Kelly Dobrinsky. And this was a time when my mind about ride-ataxia and my emotions were very fragile. I really needed somebody to believe in what I was doing so that I would believe in it myself. And Kelly was on board right away, and he built the first iteration of the ride-ataxia website. He designed the first logo, and he's been one of my biggest supporters ever since then. He designed my book cover, and he designed actually the Two Disabled Dudes logo as well. And so I am really grateful for Kelly, not only for his talent as a designer, but just for being there all the time for me. So thank you, awesome. Kelly.
I agree. Thank you, Kelly. Not only does he have an eye for logo design, or like you said, your book cover, him and his wife are both really, really gifted in the area of like home decor and designing style and looks for a place. Beautiful.
No joke, man. Yeah, they're great.
My thank you note goes out to my friend Sheila Hanlon. We do work together, but we're also friends outside of work. She is the one person that I pick on the most. We give each other such a hard time all day, every day. But she's also one of my dearest friends. She's one of the first responders in my life. If I were to have a mini breakdown or a crisis or need help, she's the one that I know that if I call her, she'll be the first one to show up or offer help or come by and bring food or whatever is needed. So just an incredible person. She happens to be one of the ladies that I cruise with or have cruised with a couple times. Hilarious.
That's awesome.
And ridiculous, but at the same time, reliable and consistent. So Sheila, thank you for your incredible heart and your jokes and your amazing friendship. Thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah, we all need someone like that, right? And yeah, it's incredible to have somebody like that in your life. So, Sean, thank you for your gratitude. Thank you to Hawken for the awesome interview today. And we want to remind all of our listeners to show gratitude, whether it's in a text, an email, or face-to-face on the phone, whatever. I guess we can't really be face-to-face right now. So, but show gratitude in any way you can. And, the Two Disabled Dudes believe it will really change your outlook on life and improve it. Thank you so much. And we will see you next time. Until then, keep living with urgency. Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
Find us online at twodisableddudes.com and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Special thanks to our friend and audio producer, Jake Tompkins.